The broadcast of the regular meeting of the Executive Committee will now begin.
Good morning and welcome to the regularly scheduled Executive Committee meeting for August 18th. My name is Jacob Fry. I'm the chair of this committee. As we begin, I will note for the record that this meeting has remote participation by committee members and staff as authorized by Minnesota statute section 13D.021 due to the declared local public health emergency. And at this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll so we can confirm a quorum for the meeting.
Councilmember Gordon.
Here.
Jenkins.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Bender. Mayor Fry.
Here.
There are 4 members present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum and can therefore proceed with business before us today. Colleagues, our agenda is before us. I'll move to adopt the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Jenkins.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Bender. Mayor Fry.
Aye.
There are 4 ayes.
That carries and the agenda is adopted. Next, we have acceptance of the minutes from our regular meeting on July 21st, and I'll move acceptance of these minutes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Jenkins.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Bender. Mayor Fry.
Aye.
There are 4 ayes.
That carries and the minutes are adopted. That brings us to our discussion items. The first item, which is number 3 on the agenda, is an update from Human Resources Department regarding waivers granted since the implementation of the city's hiring freeze. This is a report scheduled to be received at every executive committee meeting while the hiring freeze is in effect, and I'll recognize Ms. Deb Kruger from the city's HR department to give an update. Ms. Kruger.
Thank you, Mayor Fry, council members. The report that I believe is up on the screen. Ken, are we able to pull up the hiring waiver? Thank you so much. There has been, so this report goes through hiring freeze waivers that have gone through the full process and been completed as of July 16th. Which was the last time the last waiver was approved. There has been 1 change since the last report given on July 21st. So the number of waivers received has gone from 65 to 66, with 1 approval. That 1 addition was for a position in the city council offices, which was approved. And I'm going to go down to page 2, which gives a breakdown of city departments. 66 individual waivers approved, submitted, 55 approved. Total number of hires approved to date, as well as of July 16th, was 3,503. Again, that large number had to do almost primarily with seasonal staff in elections and capital construction projects and internships that were paid through a grant. The column, I think that's probably most pertinent, the number of permanent FTEs approved since the hiring waiver began since the hiring freeze began on March 31st, 68 for just shy of $6 million. Since then, I do have 1 major change to this report. Unfortunately, the decision wasn't made in time for me to reflect it in this report when it was due. There has been a change in the numbers for the row for the police department. Number of permanent FTEs, the 36 was to hire 36 police recruits that were to have started early August. As you may be aware, that decision was changed and job offers were rescinded, and they have decided not to hire that police recruit class at this time. So that actually would reduce those number of FTEs by 36, so that we would have now 32 permanent positions approved through the hiring waiver process. And then the subsequent budgetary amount, instead of 5.9 million, without those 36 police recruits, would be 3.2 million. And what's not reflected in here, so we started out with the phase 1 budget reductions for the 2020 modified budget was taking into account 275 vacant positions as of June 1st. 275 vacancies, we have approved 32 replacements. Since then, we've also had 56 additional employees leave the city of Minneapolis. So we're actually closer to 300 vacant positions at this time. So even higher than the modified budget amount. I know that finance has prepared a financial statement. Unfortunately, again, I didn't get that information prior to this report needing to be submitted. I know Councilmember Gordon was interested in, has the hiring freeze been affected, and are we hitting our goals? And the answer to that is yes. I just don't have the actual breakdown in numbers, and unfortunately, no one from the budget office was able to attend today. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Kruger. Any questions?
Mayor, I do have one question. Ms. Kruger? Thank you. You mentioned that there was a hire in the city council offices. Just curious, where?
Yes, it was for a council office associate in Council Member Fletcher's office.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Councilmember Gordon.
Yeah, I really appreciate the report and the details. I think it will be important for us to get the finance here and see the numbers. It's great that we are actually saving more than we expected, it sounds like. And some of that, I think I'm hearing, is also due to attrition, that we're even having some more savings because of some retirements. The decision not to hire that 36 for the police department, was that made by the police chief, and was that in response to the amendments that we made to the 2020 budget? Do you happen to know?
I can actually answer that question.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Gordon. So this was a recruit class that hadn't yet started training.
Okay.
And given the sentiment of the council and several members talking about cutting a significant amount from the police department, the chief didn't want to have them go all the way through training only to be cut. And so the chief decided not to move forward with that recruiting class. However, the 3 recruiting classes next year are scheduled to go as planned, as by that time we will have a feeling for what the council what strategy they will take.
So just to be really clear, there was the cadet class that graduated and they were hired earlier this spring, but this was the one that we were planning on hiring maybe in November, that would have started training this month. And okay. And
that's correct.
Thank you very much for the clarification.
That's correct. And again, the main impetus there was to not have all these recruits go through all the work only to be cut. But it is many of those same individuals that will start up in early next year for the one of 3 recruiting classes of 2021.
Thank you so much for the clarification.
Any further questions? Seeing no further discussion, I'll ask the clerk to file that report. The final item on our agenda is a salary adjustment related to the 2020 state gender pay equity test. And I'll recognize Ms. Brenda Miller with the Human Resources Department to give that presentation. Ms. Miller. Ms. Miller, are you there? You might be on mute.
I was on mute. I apologize. Thank you, Mayor Fry and members of the committee. We're here today to talk about the results of the preliminary gender pay equity test that the state requires us to run every 3 years. Could you advance to the next slide? So we last submitted a report in early 2018 for 2017 data, and we're due to submit a file in 2021 for 2020 data. So as I mentioned, we recently submitted data to get some preliminary test results just to get an idea of where we were at with the tests. We had some challenges in 2018 passing one of the tests, and as you'll note coming up here, we had some of those same challenges this year. So next slide, please. So the tests, there's 3 tests that the city has to pass. They are comparing pay practices for male-dominated jobs and female-dominated jobs. Unfortunately, the city doesn't pass the salary range tests, and this compares the average number of years to reach the top step. The calculation for the test is the average number of years for male jobs divided by the average number of years for female jobs to reach that top step. 80% is passing per the state, and the city's at 76%. So unfortunately, we fail that test. In order to pass the salary range test, we need to decrease the number of steps for female jobs as it turns out, the CNR schedule, which is the schedule for non-appointed and non-represented employees. The cost to bring the city into compliance is about $28,400 annually, or based on our implementation date of November of 2020, it'd be about $4,200 for 2020. Next slide. So in order to fix this, we had 3 goals. One was to make sure we passed the state mandated gender pay equity tests. The next one was to minimize the cost to the city. And the last one was to minimize negative impact on employees. And I'm proud to say we've met all 3 of those goals. There is pretty minimal cost to the city, as I noted. There's no negative impact on employees. Nobody's getting a pay decrease. And we do pass all of the mandated gender pay equity tests. So as I mentioned, the solution was to reduce the number of steps for CNR jobs, female-dominated jobs, by eliminating the bottom steps and then reallocating the remaining steps. And the graphic down below gives you an idea of what that looked like. So basically, step 7 in the old schedule, or the top step in the old schedule, is equivalent to the new step 5, or the top step in the new schedule. So for those employees moving from step 7 to step 5, or from the top step to step 5, there's no cost. For employees that were moving from step 1 or step 2 to the new step 1, there's a small cost, and that's the $28,400 that we're requesting approval for. Next slide. So we've reduced 35 jobs by 1 step each. The city passes the salary range test at 80.3%. Note that that's a pretty slim margin of passing. So I would note that when we extract data in December of 2020 for the final results, or the final pay submission, we may not pass that test. And if that's the case, I may have to come back and ask for some additional funds, although I anticipate it would be relatively small again. 8 employees would receive an average additional pay increase of about $3,500 as a result of the changes. And the implementation date that we've identified is November 8th of 2020. And that was chosen so that we could have the data into the system so we could extract the data on December 1st with the new changes reflected in the data. As I mentioned, the total cost is $28,400 or $4,200 for 2020. On the right-hand side, at the bottom of the slide, is a list of departments that are affected and the employees, the count of employees that are affected in the annual cost. So the affected employees include anybody that's on a salary schedule that is changing Those that have the cost are those where they're moving from the first or second step to the first step. Otherwise, if there's no cost associated, that means the employee or employees moved from the top step to the new top step. Next slide. So our request is to approve the $28,439 annually to cover the cost of the salary increases and to refer the matter to City Council. And last slide. So we also wanted to talk a little bit about our 2021 pay equity goals. As you can tell, this was pretty narrowly focused on gender pay equity, and to be honest, it was just focused on passing our gender pay equity test for the state. We want to take a broader look at gender pay equity. We also want to look at race-based pay equity. So we don't currently have a way to measure and evaluate that, so we want to develop that for 2021 and then address any issues as needed. And that's it for today.
Thank you, Ms. Kruger. Are there questions for staff? Councilmember Gordon, followed by Jenkins.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate the report. I'm also excited to see about how we can dig in a little more broadly and deeply into the gender and the race-based pay equity. The one point I guess that I wanted to emphasize was that I don't think the 80% should be our goal. I know it's the minimum and the 80.3% that we're going to make. You're right, that's putting us right on the edge. And I'm wondering how difficult it would be to come back in December or whenever you're talking about making the next report and let us know what might be a strategy so we could get to 100 and what the cost might be to get to 100. I think obviously we're starting folks in these women-dominated fields at a lower rate, or have been, than men. At least that's what it's looking like to me in those first two steps. Or so we may find that to get to 100, it's another $5,000 or a small amount. I'm not quite sure, but it's useful to have that information. Maybe you even have it now, but I just want to emphasize that. Oh, thank you.
Mayor or Councilmember Gordon, I don't have that data today. It will be a little bit, well, it would be easy to figure out what that amount would be. I think the challenge will be that then we'll be delving into some of the union schedules. And so we would be needing to negotiate with the unions on any changes.
Well, I'll just note that would, from our perspective as policymakers, that would be good information to have so we can then understand better, especially what unions or jobs that impacts as we're going through that process, and maybe set some longer term goals or aspirations, at least have that in mind. So I'd appreciate that when you're able to provide it.
Thank you. Yes, we will do that.
Thank you.
Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Mayor Fry and Ms. Miller for that report. And, we had conversation earlier as well, and I expressed some of the same sentiments as Councilmember Gordon, and just wanted to reiterate that, we need to go beyond just meeting the minimum and really try to work towards achieving true gender equity moving forward, because the fix kind of just keeps us at the same level, and so we got to work harder. And I know you guys are committed to that, but just wanted to make sure to reiterate that in this public forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for staff?
I can move the recommendation.
Great. Councilmember Gordon has moved the item number 4, which is approving an increase to the salary schedules and referring that matter to the City Council for final action. And I don't believe there's any further discussion on the item, but just checking to make sure. And seeing no discussion, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Gordon,
Aye.
Jenkins,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Bender,
Aye.
Mayor Fry.
Aye.
There are 5 ayes.
That motion carries and item number 4 is approved. I'll note for the record that Council President Lisa Bender has joined us. And with that, we have concluded all items on our agenda for today, and without objection, I'll declare that this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.